Kitsune explained, Japan's deceptive fox spirits. From the mists of time, from the sacred groves and shadowed mountains of Japan, a creature watches. It is a form both familiar and profoundly alien. It wears the guise of a simple fox, a creature of auburn fur and cunning instinct. But look closer. Look into those eyes and you will not see the soul of a mere beast. You will see an intelligence ancient and vast, a power that flickers like firelight, and a capacity for both divine grace and terrifying deception. This is the Kitsune. Welcome, seekers of lore, to the Eldritch Codex. Today we journey into the heart of Japanese folklore to unravel the enigma of its most captivating and dangerous spirit. We will trace their divine origins, dissect their fearsome powers, and recount the epic tragedies born from their games of illusion. For the story of the Kitsune is not merely a fairy tale, it is a grand tapestry woven with threads of divinity, love, betrayal, and blood. Prepare yourselves, for we are about to part the veil and gaze upon the true face of the fox. To understand a legend, we must not begin with the myth. We must begin with the truth. Before the spirit, there was the animal. Before the magic, there was the blood and bone. Before the nine-tailed god, there was a simple creature of the wilderness, a flicker of russet fur against the emerald green of the rice paddies and the deep umber of the forest floor. This is where our story begins. In the sprawling mountainous archipelago of Japan. Here, for millennia, has lived the Vulpes vulpes japonicate Japanese red fox. Known locally as the Akajitsun. It was and is a creature of breathtaking adaptability and keen intelligence. An animal perfectly designed for the world it inhabited. But to the early peoples of Japan, the hunter-gatherers of the Jomon period, the first agriculturalists of the Yaowath fox was something more. It was not just another animal. It was a presence. A neighbor. A creature that lived on the very boundary of their existence. They saw it in the twilight, that sacred time between day and night. They watched it move silently along the edges of their newly cleared fields. A guardian spirit that existed between the world of man and the untamed world of nature. It was a liminal being, belonging fully to neither the forest nor the village, but to the mysterious space in between. In its eyes they saw a cunning that seemed to transcend mere animal instinct. It was a knowing glance, a flicker of an intelligence that felt ancient, and perhaps not entirely of this world. This constant, close proximity bred a unique relationship. It was a bond woven from observation, respect, and a nascent, primal fear. They saw the fox hunt the rodents that would devour their precious grain, a silent ally in their struggle for survival. Yet, they also knew it as a cunning thief, capable of stealing poultry from a poorly guarded coop. It was both a helper and a hindrance, a blessing and a bane. This inherent duality, this ability to be both things at once, planted the first seed of the legend to come. As Japanese society evolved, so too did its spiritual beliefs. The collection of local traditions, animistic reverence for nature, and ancestor worship coalesced into what would later be known as Shinto, the way of the gods. Shinto teaches that divinity, or kami, exists in all things, in the mountains, the rivers, the trees, and even in the animals themselves. And within this burgeoning pantheon, one deity would rise to prominence, forever intertwining their fate with that of the fox. This was Inari Okami. Inari is one of Japan's most complex and important deities. A god of rice, the foundational pillar of Japanese civilization. A god of sake tea and fertility. In later centuries, Inari would become the patron of merchants, swordsmiths, and worldly success. To have the favor of Inari was to have prosperity itself. The survival of the nation rested upon the bounty that Inari provided. And as the devotion to this powerful kami grew, a question arose. How did such a mighty god communicate with the mortal world? Who were the divine intermediaries, the couriers who carried the prayers of humanity to the heavens and delivered the blessings of the god back to the earth? The answer was found in the fields, at the edge of the forest. The answer was the fox. It was a perfect poetic fit. The fox was the guardian of the rice paddies, the natural enemy of the pests that threatened the harvest. Its appearance in the fields coincided with the growing season. Its presence was an omen of a healthy ecosystem, and therefore a good harvest. And so the fox was elevated. It was no longer just an animal. It became a sacred servant, a divine messenger of the great god Inari. These were the Zenko, a term meaning good foxes. They were seen as celestial beings, often pure white in color, possessing great wisdom and benevolence. They were not worshipped as gods themselves, but revered as the holy representatives of a god. To this day, thousands of shrines to Inari across Japan are flanked by pairs of stone fox statues. They sit vigil, often holding a symbolic item in their mouths. A key to the celestial rice granary, a sacred jewel representing the spirit of the god, or a scroll containing divine wisdom. Worshippers would leave offerings for them, most famously aburajeth slices of deep-fried tofu said to be their favorite food. The fox had completed its first great transformation, from a creature of the wild to a symbol of divine favor and abundance. But the story of the Kitsune is a tale of two currents, two powerful rivers of myth flowing into one. While Japan was nurturing the image of a benevolent, sacred fox, a different kind of story was taking shape on the vast mainland of Asia. For centuries, Chinese lore had spoken of a fox spirit of a very different nature. They called it the Hulijing. The Hulijing was a creature of immense age and terrifying power. It was said that a fox that could live for 1,000 years could achieve immortality and ascend to a celestial rank. But the path was often one of darkness. These spirits were masters of deception and illusion. Their most potent ability was to shapeshift, most often into the form of an achingly beautiful young woman. These were not benevolent messengers. They were demonic seductresses. The legends told of Hulijing infiltrating the imperial courts, becoming the favored consorts of powerful emperors. They would bewitch these rulers with their unearthly beauty and cunning intelligence, all the while secretly draining them of their life essence, their chi. They were seen as harbingers of doom. Their presence in the palace, a sure sign of moral decay and political collapse. The fall of entire dynasties was laid at their feet. The most famous among them, like Daji, the consort of the final Shang emperor, were legendary figures of beautiful catastrophic evil. Beginning in the 6th century, Japan opened itself to a massive influx of culture from the continent. Along with Buddhism, sophisticated writing systems, and new forms of art and government, these stories came. They traveled across the sea, carried by monks, merchants, and emissaries. And they found fertile ground in the Japanese imagination. These potent, dramatic tales of the seductive, life-draining fox demon did not erase the native belief in the benevolent servant of Inari. Instead, they fused with it. They provided a vocabulary, a framework, for the fox's other side, its wildness, its cunning, its potential for profound mischief and outright malevolence. The Japanese already knew the fox was a trickster. The Chinese stories gave that trickery a name, a face, and a terrifying purpose. And so the great paradox of the kitsune was born. The singular identity of the fox spirit was cleaved in two. The celestial servants of Inari, the Zenko, now had a dark reflection, the Yako, or field foxes. The Yako were the wild ones. They were not bound to any god. They were a power unto themselves, earthly spirits embodying the untamed, unpredictable, and dangerous aspects of nature. While the Zenko were agents of divine will, the Yako were agents of their own chaotic whims. They were the shapeshifters, the illusionists, the tricksters who led travelers astray. They were the spirits who could possess humans, driving them to madness. They were the foxes of the ghost stories told around the hearth on a cold winter's night. This fusion created one of the most complex and compelling figures in all of world mythology. A creature of divine light that now cast a profound and terrifying shadow. It was a spirit that could be a pious messenger of heaven or a depraved demon from the abyss. It could bring a family a generation of wealth, or it could lure a man to his ruin with a single, enchanting glance. The stage was now set. The kitsune was no longer merely an animal, nor was it simply a saint. It had become a creature of duality, a walking embodiment of contradiction. And it was armed with an arsenal of supernatural powers that would allow it to play its intricate, and often deadly, games of deception upon the mortal world. The genesis was complete. The legend was about to begin. Having traced their genesis from beast to deity, we now arrive at the heart of the matter. We must dissect the very essence of the kitsune. To understand their games, we must first understand their nature. So, what truly defines a kitsune? What is the source of its legendary power, the wellspring of its magic? The answers are not found in simple biology, but in a spiritual anatomy, a framework of ethereal abilities honed over centuries of existence. The first and most iconic measure of a kitsune's standing in the supernatural world is its tails. To the uninitiated, a fox is a fox. But in the lore of Japan, the number of tails a spirit possesses is a direct and undeniable testament to its age, its wisdom, and the sheer magnitude of its magical power, its yoki. A young kitsune, merely a few decades into its long life, may possess only its single native tail. It is clever, perhaps preternaturally so, but its magical abilities are nascent, unrefined. It is said that for every century of its existence, a kitsune can manifest a new tail. With each new appendage, its power grows exponentially. A three-tailed fox is a master of minor illusions and can easily trick the unwary. A five-tailed fox is a formidable regional power, capable of influencing the weather, creating complex phantom landscapes, and challenging even trained mystics. A seven-tailed fox is a creature of immense stature, a being whose actions can affect the fortunes of entire clans. But this progression is merely a journey towards an ultimate state of being. The pinnacle of kitsune evolution, the final apotheosis that all fox spirits aspire to, is to become a Kyubi no Kitsunia nine-tailed fox. The nine-tailed fox is a demigod. It has lived for at least a millennium, and in that time, it has transcended the limitations of a mere earthly spirit. Its power becomes cosmic in scale. Legends state that a Kyubi can hear any sound and see any event happening anywhere in the world. It possesses clairvoyance, infinite wisdom, and a command over the elements that can rival the gods themselves. But such immense power is a crucible. It can forge a being of divine compassion, or it can warp a soul into a vessel of apocalyptic arrogance. The most famous and infamous kitsune in history have all been nine-tailed, their stories etched into Japan's soul with either celestial light or devastating fire. Beyond this measure of power, the kitsune command a formidable arsenal of specific abilities. Chief among them, the very cornerstone of their interaction with humanity, is the art of shape-shifting, known as hensh. The kitsune's ability to assume human form is the key that unlocks all its deceptions. While the most common guise is that of a beautiful young woman, a form perfectly suited to seducing, testing, or infiltrating the world of men, their mastery is not so limited. A powerful kitsune can become anyone. A venerable old monk to preach false doctrines, a respected nobleman to sway political tides, a lost child to prey on sympathy. However, the transformation is an intricate magic, and it is not always perfect. Younger, less experienced kitsune often betray themselves. A sharp-eyed observer might catch a glimpse of a bushy tail swishing beneath the hem of a robe. A strong light might cast a shadow that is not human, but distinctly fox-like. It was widely believed that a kitsune, no matter how perfect its disguise, could not hide its true form from its reflection in polished water or a sacred mirror. And it was said that dogs, with their primal enmity for foxes, could sense their presence instinctively and would bark uncontrollably, shattering the illusion. But a master, a kitsune of many tales and many centuries, makes no such mistakes. Their disguise is absolute, their mimicry of human emotion and speech a chilling, flawless performance. If hinge is the changing of the self, the kitsune's second great power is the changing of the world around you. They are masters of glamour and illusion, capable of weaving mirages so potent, so detailed, that they are utterly indistinguishable from reality. They do not break the laws of physics, they break the laws of your perception. This is their most subtle and profound trick. A kitsune can make a field of weeds appear as a bustling marketplace filled with vendors and shoppers. They can conjure a phantom army, complete with the clash of steel and the cries of the dying, to terrify their enemies into retreat. They can manifest a sumptuous banquet that, upon the dawn, reveals itself to be nothing more than dirt, dead leaves, and animal dung. They do not attack your body, they attack your mind, turning your own senses into weapons against you, trapping you within a prison of your own belief. Then there is the ethereal, and often ominous, phenomenon of kitsunebi or foxfire. These are not earthly flames. They are mystical lights, spectral fires that a kitsune can summon at will. They often appear as eerie, floating lanterns or will-o'-the-wisps, sometimes in long, silent processions through the mountains at night, a spectacle known as the fox's wedding, which was considered a powerful and mysterious omen. These lights could be used mischievously to lead travelers astray and hopelessly lost in the wilderness. Or they could be used benevolently to guide a favorite person through the dark. In battle, kitsunebi becomes a potent weapon, a stream of supernatural fire that can burn with a cold, ethereal light or a searing, incinerating heat. Yet, of all their powers, one was feared above all others for its intimate, violating nature. This was kitsunetsuki, which translates grimly to fox possession. This is no game of illusion. This is a direct invasion of the body and soul. A kitsune, particularly a malicious yako, could forcibly enter and take control of a mortal, with young women being the most frequent targets. The victim's personality would be utterly suppressed, replaced by that of the fox. They would begin to behave in deeply disturbing ways, speaking in voices not their own, sometimes yipping and barking. They might suddenly develop an insatiable craving for the foods loved by foxes: fried tofu, adzuki beans, and sweet rice. In the most extreme cases, the possessed were said to run naked through the streets, or to be found crawling on all fours in the dirt, their humanity seemingly erased. In feudal Japan, kitsunetsuki was not viewed as a metaphor or a mental illness. It was a genuine spiritual diagnosis, a terrifying reality. The consequences for the accused were catastrophic. They were feared, ostracized by their communities, and often subjected to painful, sometimes violent, exorcisms by Buddhist monks or Shinto priests. Whether a true supernatural phenomenon or tragic societal misunderstanding of afflictions like epilepsy or schizophrenia, the suffering caused by the belief in kitsunetsuki was undeniably real. It was a stark and horrifying reminder that a kitsune's games could move beyond deception and into the realm of absolute personal ruin. Shape-shifting, illusion, foxfire, and possession. These are the instruments in the kitsune's orchestra of chaos and wonder. This is the anatomy of the spirit, the very powers that would allow them to write themselves into the grand epics of Japan, stories of transcendent love, of devastating betrayal, and of tragedies that would echo for 1,000 years. A legend is but a collection of whispers until it is given a voice. A power is but a concept until it is wielded. Having dissected the anatomy of the fox spirit, we now turn to the annals of history and folklore, to the stories where these powers were unleashed upon the world of mortals. These are not mere fables told to frighten children. They are foundational myths, grand sagas etched into the cultural soul of Japan. They are the case studies of the kitsune's profound capacity for both divine love and devastating ruin. We shall open the codex to two of its most formative chapters. One, a tragedy of the heart, born from the love of a benevolent spirit. The other, a cataclysm of the state, born from the ambition of a demonic one. Our first tale takes us to the 10th century and begins not with deception, but with an act of pure compassion. A young nobleman of a distinguished lineage, Abe no Yasuna, was journeying to a shrine in the province of Izumi. His path took him through the sacred and ancient forest of Shinoda, a place known to be teeming with spiritual energy. There his peaceful pilgrimage was shattered by the sounds of a frantic chase. He came upon a band of cruel hunters, their arrows drawn, closing in on a magnificent, pure white fox. Moved by an instinct he could not explain, pity for the beautiful creature, or perhaps a deeper recognition of its sanctity, Yasuna did not hesitate. He drew his own blade and confronted the hunters, demanding they cease their sport. A fierce struggle ensued. Yasuna, though a nobleman, was a skilled warrior. He fought off the hunters, saving the white fox's life, but not without sustaining serious wounds himself. As the hunters fled, the grateful fox gave him a single, knowing look before vanishing into the deep shadows of the woods. Weakened and bleeding, Yasuna fell unconscious. He awoke sometime later, not in the forest, but in a nearby home, being cared for by a mysterious and compassionate woman. Her name, she said, was Kuzunoha. She nursed him with an expert tenderness, her presence a soothing balm to his pain. In the days and weeks that followed, as his body healed, their hearts became entwined. A profound and unshakable love blossomed between the nobleman and the gentle stranger. They were married, and their union was one of idyllic happiness. Soon, their joy was compounded when Kuzunoha bore him a son. They named him Dojimmer. This child was remarkable from birth, displaying an intelligence and perception that was far beyond his years. This child, born of this mysterious union, would grow up to become one of the most legendary figures in all of Japanese history. The great Onmyoji, the master of yin and yang, Abe no Saimai. For 5 blissful years they lived as a perfect family. Their home was a sanctuary of peace. But Kuzunoha lived with a constant, sorrowful secret. Her true nature was a fragile masquerade, one that could not be maintained forever. The truth, as it often does, was revealed in a fleeting, unguarded moment. One autumn afternoon, as Kuzunoha was lost in contemplation of the chrysanthemums in her garden, she became distracted. Her young son, playing nearby, caught a glimpse of something impossible. From beneath the hem of his mother's beautiful kimono, the unmistakable tip of a thick, white, bushy foxtail was visible. The boy, in his innocence, pointed it out. The spell was broken. Later that day, when Abe no Yasuna returned home, he found the house unerringly quiet. His wife and son were gone. On a painted screen in the main room, he found a farewell poem, a waka, written in Kuzunoha's elegant, familiar calligraphy. It read, Koishitabe /Tazuni kite mayo /Izumi nero /Shinoda no mori no /Uremi Kuzunoha. If you love me, darling, come and seek me. I am in the weeping forest of Shinoda, the grieving leaf of the arrowroot. The name, Kuzunoha, itself was a pun, meaning arrowroot leaf, but the final line carried a double meaning. It was also the grieving Kuzunoha. The terrible, beautiful truth crashed down upon him. His beloved wife, the mother of his brilliant child, was the very same white fox spirit he had saved all those years ago. She had taken human form to repay his kindness with love. But now that her true identity had been discovered, the ancient laws of the spirit world forbade her from remaining with her human family. Heartbroken, Yasuna called out her name. The white fox appeared to them one last time. She could no longer speak as a human, but she bestowed upon her son, Saimai, a final, parting gift. A supernatural understanding of the language of animals and the secrets of the hidden world. This gift would set him on his path to becoming Japan's greatest mystic. Then with one final, lingering gaze filled with an eternity of love and loss, Kuzunoha, the white fox mother, turned and vanished forever into the forest that was her true home. The tale of Kuzunoha is one of the most poignant in Japanese folklore. It is a story not of a malicious trickster, but of a Zenko, a good fox, whose love was as true as any mortal's. Her deception was born not of malice, but of a desperate desire for a life she could never truly have. Her tragedy was the eternal chasm between the world of spirits and the world of humanity. A love story doomed from its very beginning. But if Kuzunoha represents the benevolent, tragic heart of the kitsune, our next tale reveals its darkest, most ambitious, and most destructive soul. We now leap forward 2 centuries to the 12th century court of the cloistered Emperor Toba. It was a world of exquisite poetry, refined aesthetics, and deadly political intrigue hidden behind painted smiles. Into this sophisticated viper's nest, a new figure emerged, a woman who shone so brightly she eclipsed all others. Her name was Tamemonome. Her beauty was said to be supernatural, a thing that defied description. But it was her mind that was truly captivating. She was a polymath of impossible genius. She could discourse on ancient Buddhist sutras, Chinese philosophy, music, and astronomy with an authority that stunned the court's greatest scholars. She could answer any question, solve any riddle. Her charm was an irresistible force. The emperor was utterly, hopelessly bewitched. He made her his most favorite consort, forsaking all others. Tamemonome had conquered the court. But as her influence grew, a creeping sickness fell over the emperor. He became weak, gaunt, tormented by horrific nightmares. A profound lethargy stole his strength. The finest physicians of the imperial court were summoned, but they were baffled. They could find no earthly cause for the emperor's rapid decline. The health of the nation's sovereign faded, and with it, the stability of the empire. Whispers turned to accusations. All eyes fell upon the beautiful consort who held the emperor in her thrall, the only person who seemed to flourish as he withered. The court's official astrologer and Onmyoji, a man named Abe no Yasunaria, direct descendant of the child born to Kuzunoha, was commanded to discover the source of the curse. Yasunari's divinations pointed to an unthinkable truth. the source of the evil was not a poison or disease, but Tamamo no Mae herself. He declared that she was not human. To prove it, he devised a great and public ritual. A grand ceremony of purification, the Goseki no Mai, was organized. He explained to the court that during the ceremony's climax, all participants would have to touch a sacred gohei, a ritual wand. This act he knew would force any non-human entity to reveal its true form. As Tamamo no Mae approached the sacred objects, she initially refused, her perfect composure cracking for the first time. Forced by the emperor, she reluctantly reached out. The moment her hand touched the sacred wand, the air itself seemed to shatter. The illusion was annihilated. In her place stood not a beautiful woman, but a Kyubi no Kitsune, a golden-furred, nine-tailed demon fox of immense size and power. Uttering a piercing shriek, the creature burst through the palace roof and fled north, a streak of malevolent light against the sky. Freed from her life-draining aura, Emperor Toba recovered his strength and, filled with righteous fury, ordered the two most renowned warriors of the age, Kazusa no Suke and Miura no Suke, to assemble an army of 80,000 men to hunt down and destroy the demon. What followed was a legendary pursuit across the country. The Kitsune, now unbound and reveling in its full power, toyed with the army. It conjured phantom castles, led them on endless chases through illusory forests, and incinerated entire platoons with torrents of foxfire. The hunt finally culminated on the desolate, volcanic plains of Nasu. The warriors, having spent months in ritual purification and archery practice, were ready. In a final climactic battle, as the Kitsune unleashed its demonic power, the warrior Miura no Suke loosed a specially consecrated arrow that struck the creature's side. Wounded, the fox faltered, and in that moment, Kazusa no Suke fired a second sacred arrow that pierced its neck. The great demon, the entity whose dark history was said to stretch back through China and India, the terror of 3 nations, finally fell dead upon the plains. But such was the magnitude of its malice, so potent was the poison of its soul, that its story did not end with its death. Its rage and demonic energy seeped into the very earth, coalescing, transforming its corpse into a great, dark, volcanic rock. A rock that perpetually leaked a deadly, poisonous vapor, a miasma that killed any living thing, bird, beast, or human that dared to approach. This stone became known as the Sessho the Killing Stone. For nearly 400 years it stood as a monument to pure evil, its legend a chilling warning. The vengeful spirit of Tamamo no Mae was said to be trapped within, her hatred continuing to poison the world. It was not until the 14th century that a revered Buddhist monk named Jin-o Shinsho, armed only with his faith and a ritual hammer, performed a great exorcism. He struck the stone, and it shattered, finally releasing the spirit to face judgment. The tale of Tamamo no Mae is the ultimate cautionary tale. It is the Kitsune as a cosmic threat, a story of ambition and deception played for the highest possible stakes, the soul of an emperor and the fate of an empire. Together, she and Kuzunoha represent the two poles of the Kitsune's being, the tragic lover and the monstrous deceiver, forever bound together in the grand, contradictory legend of the fox. Myths are not dead things, confined to dusty scrolls and forgotten shrines. They are living organisms of narrative. They do not die, they adapt. They shed old skins and grow new ones, finding purchase in the fertile soil of new generations, new technologies, new forms of storytelling. The Kitsune, more than perhaps any other spirit in the Japanese pantheon, is a master of this survival, a testament to the enduring power of a well-crafted legend. Its shadow, cast from the ancient past, falls long and dark across our modern world. Its form has shifted once again not through the magic of henge, but through the alchemy of human creativity. It has shapeshifted into the pixels of our screens, the ink of our comics, and the code of our games. First, we must acknowledge that the old ways endure. The reverence for the Zenko, the benevolent servants of the divine, continues unabated. The Fushimi Inari Grand Shrine in Kyoto, the head shrine for some 30,000 subordinate Inari shrines across Japan, remains one of the most visited and iconic sacred sites in the nation. Millions of pilgrims and tourists still walk its sacred mountain paths, passing under the thousands of vermilion gates donated by faithful patrons. They still leave offerings of rice, sake, and fried tofu for the stone-carved fox messengers who stand eternal vigil. The belief in the fox as a bringer of prosperity, a guardian of the harvest and of commerce, is a thread of faith that has remained unbroken for over 13 centuries. But while the Zenko remains revered in its sacred context, it is the Yakoth wild trickster and the Cubith nine-tailed titan that have undergone the most explosive and far-reaching transformation. They have found a powerful new life, a new hunting ground, in the sprawling ecosystem of global popular culture. For countless people around the world, their first encounter with the fox spirit was not through folklore, but through the vibrant worlds of anime, manga, and video games. Consider the monumental series Naruto. Its protagonist is the host, the Jinchuriki for Kurama, the nine-tailed fox. Initially, Kurama is portrayed as the quintessential demon fox, a living cataclysm of pure rage and destructive power, a being feared and hated by all. But the entire narrative arc of the series is a journey of reconciliation. Naruto does not defeat the demon within him, he befriends it. The feared monster becomes his most powerful and trusted ally. This storyline is a perfect modern retelling of the Kitsune's core duality, a masterful exploration of the journey from feared demon to respected partner. In the global phenomenon of Pokémon, The creature known as Ninetails is a direct and unambiguous descendant of the Kitsune legend. Described as a highly intelligent and vengeful creature, capable of living for 1,000 years and understanding human speech, it wields mystical fire and can lay a curse on those who harm it. Its very name and appearance are a direct homage to the Kyubi no Kitsune, and through this franchise, the core concept of the nine-tailed fox was introduced to an entire generation of children across the planet. Video games, a medium built on power and transformation, are replete with the fox's spirit. In the massively popular League of Legends, the champion Ahri is a modern reimagining of the seductive, life-draining fox. Her backstory tells of a fox who longed to be human, consuming the life essence of mortals to fuel her transformation. She is a perfect blend of the tragic lover archetype, like Kuzunoha, and the dangerous seductress, like Tamamo-no-Mae. Her primary ability in the game is even called Charm, a direct mechanization of the Kitsune's legendary power of enchantment. From Shippo, the young, mischievous fox demon in the series Inuyasha, to the cunning race of thieves known as the Keaton in The Legend of Zelda, to the fox masks and shrines that grant power in the game Ghost of Tsushima, the legacy is everywhere. The Kitsune has successfully shapeshifted into a global archetype. It has become a narrative shorthand for the alluring shapeshifter, the wise and ancient mentor, the cunning trickster with a hidden heart, or the powerful entity whose allegiance is always in question. This modern incarnation is not a dilution of the original myth. It is proof of its potency. The reason the Kitsune translates so perfectly into these new mediums is because its core, foundational concepts are universal and timeless. The theme of duality of good and evil coexisting within a single being resonates with their own complex moral nature. The power of transformation speaks to our deep-seated desire for change, for self-improvement, and our fear of hidden identities. The Kitsune as the alluring but dangerous stranger taps into our primal anxieties about trust and betrayal. It is the living embodiment of the idea that appearances can be deceiving, that the most beautiful face can hide the most dangerous intentions. The fox's shadow has not faded with time. It has grown longer, more complex, and has touched more corners of the globe than the ancient storytellers could have ever dreamed. The Kitsune has transcended its Japanese origins to become a permanent and powerful fixture in the shared mythology of the modern world. And so, after this long journey from the rice paddies of ancient Japan to the glittering courts of emperors, from the pages of sacred scrolls to the glowing pixels of our modern screens, we arrive back at our fundamental question. Why? Why this spirit? Of the countless yokai and kami that populate the rich tapestry of Japanese folklore, why has the Kitsune, the fox spirit, ascended to such a prominent place in the global imagination? Why does it continue to haunt us, to captivate and terrify us in equal measure? The answer, I believe, is as complex and multifaceted as the creature itself. The enduring allure of the Kitsune does not lie in its power, nor in its beauty alone. It lies in its profound ambiguity. The Kitsune is not a simple monster to be slain, nor a simple deity to be worshipped. It is a mirror. It is a mirror that reflects the deepest dualities of the human experience. When we look at the Kitsune, we see ourselves in all our contradictory glory. In its benevolence, in the tragic tale of Kuzunoha, we see our highest aspirations reflected. We see our capacity for selfless love, for profound sacrifice, and for a deep spiritual connection with the natural world. Her story speaks to a fundamental human longing for a world more magical than our own, a world where an act of kindness could be repaid with a lifetime of wonder, a world where the veil between our reality and a grander, more ancient one is thin enough to be pierced by love. But in its malevolence, we are forced to confront our own darkest impulses. The grand deception of Tamamo-no-Mae is more than a story about a demon fox. It is a timeless allegory for political corruption, for the seductive allure of power, and for the way that beauty and charisma can be wielded as weapons to blind entire nations to a creeping evil. The terror of Kitsunetsuki, of fox possession, is a reflection of our primal fear of losing control of our minds, of our bodies, of our very identities. It is the fear of the unknown that lurks within our own consciousness. The Kitsune is the ultimate embodiment of the liminal space. It is not a creature of the day or of the night, but of the twilight. It is not wholly good, nor wholly evil. It is divine and demonic, creator and destroyer, lover and killer. It exists in the gray spaces between certainties, in the borderlands between the civilized world and the untamed wild, between sanity and madness, between love and ruin. It teaches us a fundamental, and often unsettling truth, that things are rarely what they seem. It is a perpetual reminder to question appearances, to look beneath the beautiful surface for the hidden truth, to understand that every light casts a shadow, and that the most enchanting face can hide the most dangerous heart. The Kitsune's mastery of deception is legendary, yes. But its greatest trick was never making a desolate field look like a magnificent palace. Its greatest illusion was never conjuring a phantom army from thin air. Its greatest trick was weaving itself so deeply and so inextricably into the fabric of the human psyche that we can never truly be rid of it. It has become a permanent resident of our collective subconscious. It haunts our stories, our games, our art, and our dreams, a shape-shifting archetype that we reinvent again and again to explain the mysteries of our own world and of our own hearts. And so, the next time you find yourself walking alone as twilight bleeds across the sky, Or you feel an inexplicable presence in the corner of your eye, pause for a moment. Wonder what ancient intelligence might be watching you. Wonder what grand game is being played just beyond the limits of your perception. And remember the tales you have heard today, for you may be in the presence of something far older, far wiser, and far more dangerous than a simple fox. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Japanese folklore. The tales of the kitsune are as vast and deep as the forests they inhabit, and we have only scratched the surface of their enduring legacy. If you wish to continue plumbing the depths of forgotten lore and exploring the shadows of mythology, be sure to subscribe to the Eldritch Codex and ring the bell of summoning for future expeditions. Let us know in the comments which legend you would have us unearth next. Until our paths cross again, walk wisely and question what you see. The Morgan explained, Ireland's terrifying goddess of war, fate and sovereignty. Listen closely. Can you hear it? Beyond the clamor of our modern world, in the quiet spaces of the heart, there is a sound that has echoed through the ages. It is the whisper on the wind that rustles the ancient oaks of Ireland. It is the furious beat of black wings against a blood-red sky. It is the low guttural cry of the raven watching from a lonely standing stone. This is the sound of a power as old as the Emerald Hills themselves. A power that is both terrifying and magnificent. A force of nature that cannot be tamed, bargained with, or ignored. It is the presence of a goddess who walks the misty line between life and death, who weaves the threads of destiny, and who bestows the very right to rule. She is the Phantom Queen. The Great Queen. The washer at the ford, cleansing the armor of the doomed. The harbinger of battle, whose shriek alone can shatter the courage of armies. Today we open the Eldritch Codex to a chapter written in blood, prophecy, and primordial power. We seek to understand the one who is many, the fury that is also wisdom, the end that is also a beginning. Today we speak the name of the Morgan. To speak of the Morgan is to attempt to grasp smoke, to capture the mist on a cold morning. She is a presence that defies simple definition, a deity who refuses the comfort of a single name or singular form. To even begin to comprehend her, we must first confront the riddle of her identity, a mystery encoded in the ancient syllables of her very name. Her most common title, in Morgan, presents us with an immediate and profound duality. For the scholar, it is a crossroads of meaning. One path leads to the Old Irish Morrigan, which translates, with majestic simplicity, to the Great Queen. This name resonates with power, with authority, with the deep, foundational right of a monarch. It speaks of a queen who reigns not over a court of mortals in a hall of gold, but over the very forces that govern existence. She is the queen of the bloody field, the queen of the turning of fate, and the queen of the land itself, whose blessing is the source of all legitimate rule. This is the Morgan as a pillar of cosmic order, a figure of immense and terrible majesty. But there is another path, the darker road. Some etymologists trace her name to a Proto-Indo-European root, mor dash, an ancient word pregnant with terror, one that would eventually slither into the English language as mare in the word nightmare. In this chilling light, her name becomes not the Great Queen but the Phantom Queen. This is not a monarch of order but a specter of dread. This is the apparition that haunts the edges of the battlefield, the whisper of doom in a warrior's ear, the terrifying, incorporeal presence that signifies a world about to be unmade. So which is she? The Great Queen or the Phantom Queen? The pillar of sovereignty or the harbinger of nightmares? The truth, as ancient as the stones of Ireland, is that she is not one or the other. She is both. The Phantom is the queen, her greatness is her terror. To understand her is to hold these two truths in balance, for her nature is a paradox, a sacred and terrifying union of opposites. This complexity does not end with her name. It extends to her very being. The Morgan is rarely depicted as a solitary figure. The texts reveal her as a divine collective, a sisterhood of goddesses so deeply intertwined that their identities blur and merge, creating a single, multifaceted consciousness. They are a trinity of terror and sovereignty, three faces of a single, indivisible godhead. To meet one is to feel the shadow of the others fall upon you. First, let us speak the name of Bab. Her name in Old Irish means crow, or more specifically the scald crow, the carrion bird that haunts the aftermath of human violence. Bab is the prophetess of blood, the incarnation of the psychological horror of war. She is not a warrior who swings an axe, but a terror that unravels the sanity of armies. Long before the first sword is drawn, her presence is known. She is the ill-omened bird that circles a fort, its cry a prophecy of the slaughter to come. In the Leber Gabala Iren, the great mythological history of Ireland, it is stated with a grim poetry that the field of battle is the garden of the Bab, a land she reaps. Imagine it, a landscape of death and carnage seen not as a wasteland but as a place of harvest for a dark goddess. She is the fury and the chaos, but also the inevitable consequence. In the tales of the Battle of Clontarf, it was said that she and other spectral beings could be seen flying overhead, her terrible cries mingling with the clash of steel, sowing panic and despair amongst the soldiers of the losing side. To hear the shriek of Bab was to feel your courage turn to water, your strength abandon your limbs. She was fear given wings, a black-feathered omen whose shadow alone was a weapon of war. Then we must look upon the face of Macha. Macha is a figure of profound depth, inextricably bound to the earth, to the untamed power of horses, and to the very concept of sovereignty. Her name is forever consecrated in the soil of the ancient capital of Ulster, Emain Mach, the twins of Macha. But her story is not one of glory, it is a tragedy of divine power wronged, and the terrible righteous fury that follows. The tale is told of a wealthy Ulster farmer named Crunchu. After the death of his wife, a woman of otherworldly beauty and power appeared at his home. She did not speak her name, but moved in and began to manage his household with supernatural skill. This was Macha. Under her care, Crunch's wealth grew, and he fell deeply in love with her. Before leaving for a great festival hosted by the king of Ulster, Concobar Mac Nessa, Macha, now heavy with child, made him promise one thing, that he would not boast of her to anyone. But in the drunken revelry of the festival, watching the king's magnificent horses win their race, Crunch's pride overwhelmed his promise. He stood and declared that his wife could run faster than the king's 2 champion steeds. King Concobar, his royal pride stung, was furious. He ordered Crunch seized and declared that his boast would be put to the test. If it failed, Crunch would be put to death. Messengers were sent, and Macha was dragged before the king and the assembled men of Ulster. She was in the final throes of pregnancy, her body racked with the first pains of labor. She pleaded with the king, "I am near my time. Have mercy. To force me to run now would be a great dishonor." She begged the assembled crowd, "Help me. A mother bore each of you. Show me compassion." But the king was deafened by his own arrogance, and the crowd was silent. They would not defy their ruler. Macha turned her gaze upon them all, and her plea turned into a grim warning. "Then a greater shame will come upon you because of this," she said. Left with no choice, she gathered her divine strength. She ran against the 2 finest horses in the kingdom. And she won. As she crossed the finish line, just ahead of the horses, she collapsed to the ground, and her body was torn by a final, agonizing shriek of pain and victory. There on the race ground, she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. And with her last breath, as her life force poured out of her, she unleashed her power. She cursed the men who had stood by and watched her humiliation. For 9 generations, she decreed, in their kingdom's hour of greatest need, in the moment they most needed their strength for battle, the men of Ulster and all their descendants would be struck down, as helpless as a woman in childbirth, for 5 days and 4 nights. This curse, the Ces Ulad, will become the defining weakness of Ulster, the pivotal plot point of Ireland's greatest epic, the Táin Bua Cuinch. Macha is thus the embodiment of the sacred pact between a ruler and the divine feminine, the sovereignty of the land itself. She shows us that the land is fertile and life-giving, but when dishonored, its vengeance is absolute, patient, and devastating. The third sister runs shrieking from the shadows. Her name is Nemain. Her name means frenzy, venom, panic. If Bab is the psychological dread that precedes the battle, and Macha is the righteous fury born of dishonor, Nemain is the raw, mindless, blood-crazed chaos at its very heart. She is the Riostrat, the battle spasm that contorts the body of a hero into a monstrous form. She is the red mist that descends upon the eyes, stripping away all thought, all loyalty, all reason, leaving only the primal instinct to kill. The texts describe her running amongst the armies as they clashed, her venomous voice a supernatural scream that shattered the minds of warriors. In her presence, battalions would fall into confusion, friend would turn on foe, and entire armies would dissolve into a self-consuming madness. She did not need a weapon, her very presence was a contagion of violence. Nemain embodies the truth that war is not a noble game of strategy, it is a descent into primal chaos, an event that can break the sanity of even the strongest of men. She is the goddess of the moment when a soldier becomes a beast, the pure, undiluted insanity of the battlefield made manifest. Bab, Macha, Nemain. The Crow of Doom, the Sovereign Earth, the Battle Frenzy. These 3 are the core of the Phantom Sisterhood. Yet, sometimes a 4th name is whispered, a name that seems at first to be a contradiction. The name is Anand or Anu. She is called the Mother of the Irish Gods, a goddess of the earth, of plenty, of prosperity and fertility. Her sacred place, the Paps of Anu, are 2 hills shaped like the breasts of a great Earth Mother, a source of nourishment for the land. How can this gentle, life-giving figure be part of such a dark and violent trinity? Her inclusion is the key to understanding the full circle of the Morrigan's power. She is not merely a goddess of destruction. She is a goddess of the entire cycle. The carnage of Bab and Nemain clears the field. The death they bring fertilizes the soil. The curse of Macha is a harsh lesson that, once learned, restores balance. Anand is the promise of what comes after. She is the new growth that springs from the blood-soaked earth, the prosperity that can only be built upon a foundation secured by sacrifice and trial. She reminds us that destruction is not the end goal. It is a necessary, albeit terrible, clearing of the way for renewal. The Great Queen, the Phantom Queen, the Crow, the Sovereign, the Frenzy, the Mother. These are her faces. These are her names. They are the question and the answer, the wound and the healing, the fury and the reason for it. To understand them is to take the first step into the dark and magnificent world of the goddess who is one, and who is many. They are the shape of the phantom, the voices of the queen. They are the Morrigan. The Morrigan is, above all else, a goddess of war. This is her primary domain, the theater in which her most terrifying and magnificent powers are displayed. Yet, to label her simply a war goddess, is to misunderstand her nature completely. She is not a divine champion like the Greek Athena, clad in gleaming armor, a master of strategy and righteous battle. Nor is she a parallel to the Roman Mars or the Norse Tyr, gods who stand as paragons of martial discipline and valor. And she is certainly not the brutish, blood-drunk Ares, who revels in the simple, animalistic joy of slaughter. Her role in conflict is more ancient, more elemental, and infinitely more insidious. She is a goddess of the totality of war, the political tension that precedes it, the psychological terror that defines it, and the prophetic outcome that concludes it. She does not often lift a sword or a spear. She does not need to. Her weapons are far more potent. They are fear, chaos, magic, and the immutable certainty of prophecy. Her influence begins long before the first blood is spilled, when kings and chieftains begin to plot, when old grievances fester and ambitions sour into a thirst for conquest. Her presence is the unseen catalyst. She is the tension in the negotiation tent, the dark premonition in a king's sleep that urges him toward a violent path. One of her most feared pre-battle tactics was a form of potent offensive magic, the Glam Dyson. This was no mere curse shouted in anger, it was a ritual of spiritual destruction. The Morrigan, or a druid acting in her name, would ascend to a hilltop overlooking the enemy encampment. There, in a formal poetic satire, they would chant a meticulously crafted verse, mocking the enemy chieftain, exposing his flaws and prophesying his defeat. This was not aimed at the ears of the soldiers, but at the very soul of their army. The magic of the Glam Dyson was said to be so powerful it could wither the land, cause boils to break out on the face of its target, and most critically, drain the courage and martial vigor from an entire host of warriors. They would enter the battle not with strength, but with a gnawing sense of shame and impending doom, already spiritually defeated before the first shield wall ever met. But it is on the field of battle itself that her true, terrible form is revealed. Here, her theater is the sky, and her primary guise is that of the corvus crow, the raven, the carrion bird. In the Celtic psyche, these birds were not mere scavengers, they were psychopomps, liminal creatures that moved between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. They were the first to arrive at a battle's conclusion to feast upon the fallen. To see a flock of crows gathering was a grim omen that a feast was being prepared for them. When the Morrigan appeared in this form, she was the omen made manifest. She was Bad, the crow of battle. She would fly, a black shape against a sky gray with smoke or red with blood, her shadow a moving stain across the slaughter below. Her cry was not the natural call of a raven, but a supernatural guttural shriek that echoed with the promise of death. This cry alone was a weapon. It could instill a paralyzing terror in the hearts of those who heard it, causing them to drop their weapons and flee. It could also incite the frenzy of Nemain, driving warriors into a blind rage where they could no longer distinguish friend from foe, turning a disciplined army into a chaotic mob of self-destruction. The most complete and awe-inspiring account of her martial power comes from the epic tale of the Cath Mage Twyard's Second Battle of Mag Twyard. On the eve of the final decisive engagement, as the two divine armies faced each other across the plain, the Morrigan made her presence known. She did not appear to the entire army, but to their leader, Luff of the Long Arm. She came to him as a prophetess, delivering a promise and a strategy. She promised him victory for the Tuatha De Danann and ruin for the Fomorians. She then proceeded to enact a series of powerful magical rites to ensure this outcome. The text describes her first act with chilling simplicity. She uttered a spell over the hosts. Then, in a profoundly visceral and pagan ritual, she performed an act of sympathetic magic. She somehow obtained blood from the hearts of the Fomorian kings or magically created it and gave 2 handfuls of their blood to be sprinkled over the host of the Tuatha De, symbolically giving them power over their enemy's life force. But her masterstroke was an act of pure psychological warfare. As the battle was about to be joined, she ascended to a high, rocky outcrop where all could see and hear her. And from there she delivered a thunderous prophecy poem. First, she proclaimed victory for her chosen people, her voice, amplified by her divine power, echoing across the plain, filling the Tuatha De with supernatural courage and conviction. Then, she turned her voice upon the Fomorians, prophesying their doom, their defeat, their utter annihilation. As her voice reached its crescendo, the aspect of Nemain took over. The Fomorian ranks were seized by a venomous panic. The air itself seemed to turn against them. The text says that showers of fire and clouds of mist descended upon them. They were driven mad by her shrieks, their formations breaking as they were gripped by a collective terror. They were defeated in spirit long before the final blow was struck. In this crucial battle, the Morrigan secured victory not by matching the Fomorian champion Baelor's strength, but by shattering the will of an entire army with her presence, her magic, and her voice. Yet, her role does not end with the last fallen foe. After the Tuatha De Danann had won their hard-fought victory, it was the Morrigan who stepped forward to proclaim the meaning of the event. And here we see the true depth of her being. She delivered not 1 but 2 prophecies. First, she proclaimed a great peace, a golden age for Ireland now that the Fomorian tyranny was broken. She sang of a future of abundance and order, of peace up to heaven, heaven down to earth, a time of prosperity and right rule. This was the gift of war's end, the fertile growth made possible by the bloody clearing. But then, as the assembled gods listened, her tone shifted. A shadow fell over her words. She delivered a second, darker prophecy. She looked beyond the immediate peace and saw the inevitable turning of the cosmic wheel. With a voice of profound sorrow, she foretold the eventual end of this world. A distant age of chaos and dissolution. A time when all order would unravel. I shall not see a world which will be dear to me, she lamented. Summer without flowers, cattle without milk, women without modesty, men without valor. Conquests without a king. Woods without masts, sea without produce. False judgments of old men, false precedents of lawyers, every man a betrayer, every son a reaver. An evil time. This duality is the very essence of her role as a war goddess. She is not a champion of endless conflict. She is the embodiment of its terrible necessity. She understands that war is a part of the natural order. A violent and horrific storm that must sometimes be weathered to clear the way for peace. But she also understands, with a grim and ancient wisdom, that no peace is permanent. Every golden age will eventually tarnish. Every order will one day decay into chaos. The cycle of war and peace, creation and destruction, is eternal. She is the cry of the crow. A cry that announces both the coming of death and the eventual, hard-won peace that will follow. She is the goddess of the terrible, unavoidable truth of the cycle. War is a crucible. A roaring forge where the fates of men and nations are hammered into new and often tragic shapes. And as a goddess of war, the Morrigan is inevitably a goddess of fate. Her power extends beyond the incitement of conflict. It reaches into the very fabric of destiny itself. She does not merely influence the outcome of battles. She sees it, she knows it, and at times, she announces it with the chilling and sorrowful finality. She is a prophetess, an oracle whose pronouncements are not warnings of a possible future, but declarations of an immutable one. This profound connection to destiny is most powerfully and tragically embodied in one of her most enduring and fearsome forms, the archetype of the Bean Nai, pronounced Banshia, the washer at the ford. To understand this vision is to understand the very heart of Celtic fatalism. So imagine a warrior, a champion of his clan, his heart a mix of cold resolve and the low hum of fear. He is marching to a battle from which he will not return, though he does not yet know it. His path takes him to a river ford, a natural and necessary place of crossing. This is the liminal space, a threshold between the safety of the hearth and the chaos of the shield wall, a boundary between the world of the living and the realm that will soon belong to the dead. As he approaches the water's edge, he sees a figure through the low-hanging mist. It is a woman kneeling on the stones by the stream. Sometimes the tales describe her as a haggard old crone, her skin like wrinkled parchment, her back bent by an eternity of sorrowful labor. Other times she is a maiden of unearthly beauty, her youth making her task all the more tragic. She is weeping, but the sound is swallowed by the gurgle of the river. Her grief is a silent, cosmic thing. Her hands are in the frigid water, and she is washing. Her movements are rhythmic, tireless, a ritual that seems as ancient as the flow of the water itself. She is washing a pile of clothing and armor. And as she wrings the water from a tunic, the stream around her does not run clear. It runs crimson. She is scrubbing and rinsing the bloodstains from the armor of a man already doomed. The warrior, compelled by a sense of dread, draws closer. His footsteps are heavy on the damp earth. And as he looks upon the pile of bloody garments, a cold dread seizes his heart and freezes the breath in his lungs. He recognizes the crest on the shield. He recognizes the fine linen of the tunic, a gift from his wife. He recognizes the specific dents and scratches on the greaves, each one a memory of a battle survived. It is his own armor. It is his own clothing. The washer at the ford does not look up. She does not speak. She does not cause the warrior's death. She is not an assassin waiting in ambush. She is a far more terrible thing. She is a harbinger, a living omen of a fate that has already been woven, a destiny already sealed by the cosmos. Her presence is a sign that the warrior's thread in the great tapestry of life is about to be cut. She is the universe itself, grieving in advance for a life about to be extinguished. To see her is to be granted the terrible knowledge of your own imminent demise. This figure is one of the most potent and sorrowful images in all of Celtic mythology, and she is universally recognized as an aspect of the Morrigan. In this guise, her battle fury is gone. Her chaotic frenzy is replaced by a profound, almost tender sadness. She is the embodiment of the sorrow of war, the lonely, grim duty that follows the glory and the rage. The symbolism is layered and deep. The ford is the point of no return. To cross it after seeing her is to knowingly walk into your own grave. The water, a sacred element of life, purification and rebirth, is here subverted. It is used not to cleanse for continued life, but to perform a final pre-mortem death rite. The act of washing is an act of profound futility. She is not cleaning the armor so it can be worn again. She is preparing the grave clothes. The lore states that a warrior's reaction to this vision was a final test of his character. A coward would flee, trying in vain to escape his fate, and would die dishonorably. But a true hero, a man of courage, could confront the apparition. It was said that if a warrior approached her respectfully and bravely, he could speak to her. He could ask the solemn question, Whose armor do you wash? And she in her sorrowful duty would answer. She might speak his own name, or the names of his companions who were also destined to fall that day. In some tales, a particularly brave hero could try to claim his bloody garments from her. If he succeeded, he could gain a wish from her, but the price was to face his sealed fate with absolute, unflinching courage. This role as the washer at the fort elevates the Morrigan from a simple instigator of conflict to a divine arbiter of destiny. She is present at the most critical moments of transition, the final juncture where a life's path takes its fatal turn. She is not the rage of the storm but the terrible, silent calm in its eye. She is the witness to the inexorable, grinding gears of fate, a silent, sorrowful guardian standing at the very gateway to the otherworld, forever washing the blood of heroes from the stream of time. War and fate. These are the twin pillars of the Morrigan's domain, vast and terrifying concepts that shape the world of mortals. But there is a third, more foundational power she holds, a power that underpins the very structure of society itself. It is the concept of sovereignty. To our modern minds, sovereignty is a political term, the authority of a state to govern itself. But to the ancient Irish, it was something far more mystical, more intimate, and more alive. The land itself, the kingdom, the territory, the Tuath was not merely a tract of earth to be conquered and ruled. It was a goddess, a living, breathing, female divinity. For any man to become a king, he could not simply take the land by force of arms. He had to be chosen by it. He had to be accepted by the goddess of the land in a sacred, symbolic marriage. This divine union, known as the Banes Regi or the wedding of kingship, was the ultimate source of a king's legitimacy. This was not just a metaphor, it was a perceived reality. A king in right relationship with the sovereignty goddess would see his kingdom flourish. The rivers would teem with fish, the cattle would be heavy with milk, the fields would yield bountiful harvests, and his people would enjoy peace and prosperity. The land, his divine bride, was content. But if a king was unjust or unworthy, the land would reject him. His reign would be marked by famine, plague, and defeat in battle. The goddess would have withdrawn her favor, rendering his rule barren and illegitimate. The Morrigan is one of the most powerful and demanding of these sovereignty goddesses. She is the ultimate embodiment of the land's will. But she does not offer her favor freely. She is not a passive prize to be won by the strongest warrior. She is the ultimate tester, the guardian at the gateway of power, who subjects all potential kings to a trial that measures not their strength of arm, but their strength of character. Her test often appears in the mythology through a powerful and recurring motif, the archetype of the loathly lady. This is a story that echoes across Irish and later Arthurian lore, and it is a perfect illustration of the Morrigan's method. The tale begins with the hero, often a future king or one of a group of royal brothers, journeying through the wilderness. Lost or perhaps hunting, he comes upon a figure that defies belief. It is a woman of such profound ugliness she seems a creature from a nightmare. The texts describe her with visceral detail. Skin the color of a blackened hearthstone, teeth like rusted nails, a single, roomy eye weeping in the center of her face, and a stench of the grave clinging to her ragged clothes. She is the loathly lady, sovereignty in its most terrifying, challenging guise. She confronts the hero and makes a demand. Often it is a demand for a kiss. Sometimes she asks to share his bed. It is an act that would repel any ordinary man, an act designed to test the very limits of his compassion and his perception. In the stories, the unworthy candidate, the men driven by superficiality, arrogance, or disgust invariably fail. They recoil from her. They mock her hideousness, or they refuse her request with contempt. In doing so, they are not just spurning an old hag, they are rejecting the land itself in its wild, untamed aspect. Their failure is a judgment. It proves their unworthiness to rule, and they are fated to fade into obscurity or meet a grim end. But the true hero, the man destined for kingship, reacts differently. Perhaps the most famous example comes from the tale of Nial of the Nine Hostages, the legendary ancestor of the Ui Nial dynasty. Nial and his brothers, lost and dying of thirst, find a well guarded by just such a monstrous hag. She will only grant them water in exchange for a kiss. His brothers, one by one, refuse in disgust. But Nial, showing his innate kingly nature, not only agrees to kiss her but says he will lie with her as well. He embraces her fully. And in that moment of acceptance, of seeing worth beyond the hideous exterior, the magic happens. The monstrous hag transforms. In his arms she becomes the most beautiful woman in the world, radiant and divine. She reveals her true identity. I am the sovereignty of Ireland, she declares. And because you have embraced me in my foulest form, you and your descendants shall be high kings over all others. Nial passed the test. He proved he had the inner virtue, the courage, and the wisdom to embrace the land in all its forms, not just its sunlit pastures, but its dark and frightening wildernesses. The Morrigan is the very essence of this challenging, testing aspect of sovereignty. She is not the gentle, placid earth mother. She is the land's fury, its unforgiving winters, its trackless bogs, its raw and primordial power. To be a true king, a man must prove he is worthy of this untamed force. He must demonstrate that his desire for the kingdom is not rooted in a lust for its beauty and riches, but in a deep respect for its total, and sometimes terrifying, nature. She will test a hero's courage in the crucible of battle. She will test his integrity when he is tempted by power. and she will test his compassion and his vision in the face of the grotesque. Her favor is the ultimate prize, granting not just a crown and a title, but the very lifeblood of the kingdom. The legitimacy of a true ruler, the prosperity of a loyal people, and the sacred blessing of the earth itself. To earn her blessing is to become a legend. But to earn her enmity? To fail her test, to scorn her offer, to see only the loathly lady and not the queen within? That is to invite a doom that is personal, relentless, and absolute. It is the lesson that Ireland's greatest and most tragic hero, Cuchulainn, would learn at a terrible, world-altering cost. If we are to find the core of the Morrigan's mythos, the story where all her aspects, war, fate, and sovereignty converge into a single devastating narrative, we must turn to one man. We must speak the name of Ireland's greatest champion, the demigod warrior whose glory was matched only by his tragedy. This is the tale of the Morrigan and Cuchulainn, the Hound of Ulster. Their story is not a simple clash of hero and monster. It is a twisted love story, a bitter prophecy, a personal vendetta, and a fateful dance between a goddess and a mortal that could only ever end in blood and sorrow. The stage for their drama is the great Irish epic, the Táin Bó Cúailnge cattle raid of Cooley. Queen Medb of Connacht, driven by ambition and envy, has raised a grand army to invade the province of Ulster. Her goal, to steal the magnificent prize bull, the Don Quailnge. But as her forces cross the border, they find the land undefended. The curse of the goddess Machu has fallen upon the men of Ulster, leaving them incapacitated, struck down by the phantom pains of childbirth. The entire province lies vulnerable. All that stands between Medb's relentless army and the heart of Ulster is a single ferocious obstacle. A boy. A 17-year-old warrior named Setanta, now known as Cuchulainn, possessed of superhuman strength and the terrible battle frenzy known as the Ryostrad. He alone holds the line. Day after day he challenges Medb's champions to single combat at a river ford, slaying them one by one, holding back an entire army through sheer impossible valor. It is here, during a brief respite from his endless battle, that his destiny confronts him. As he rests, weary and bloodstained, a figure approaches his camp. She is a woman of breathtaking beauty, her clothes the vibrant colors of royalty, her bearing that of a queen. She moves with a supernatural grace. She introduces herself as the daughter of Buin, the king, though this is a poetic title, not a literal one. She tells Cuchulainn that she has heard the songs of his mighty deeds and has fallen in love with him. She makes him an offer. "I have brought you my love," she says, her voice like music, "and I have brought you my treasures and my herds of cattle. Aid me and I will aid you. Take me with you." This is the moment. This is the test. This is not a mere princess offering her affection. This is the Morrigan in her guise as the goddess of sovereignty. This is the loathly lady in her fair form, the land itself offering its divine favor, its power, its very essence to the champion who defends it. It is the ultimate offer, the key to a glorious and prosperous future. And Cuchulainn, the great hero, fails utterly. Blinded by his warrior's pride, consumed by the singular focus of his duty, he sees only an interruption. He sees only a woman, and he has no time for such matters. He rejects her, and he does so with the casual arrogance of youth. "It is not for a woman's backside that I am engaged in this hardship," he scoffs. "I have no time for dalliance. The work I am doing is too great." In that single dismissive sentence he seals his fate. He has not just spurned a beautiful woman. He has scorned a goddess. He has rejected the very land he is fighting to protect. He has looked upon the face of sovereignty and turned away. The transformation is instantaneous. The seductive allure vanishes from the Morrigan's face, replaced by a cold, reptilian fury. The rejected goddess now becomes the avenging fury. "That will bring you ill luck," she hisses, her voice no longer music, but the promise of doom. "Had you accepted me, I would have brought you greatness. Since you have spurned me, I will be the cause of your death." She then lays out her vow of vengeance, a prophecy of supernatural interference. "When you are in the heat of combat with the warrior who is your equal," she declares, "I will come against you. I will come in the form of an eel and I will wrap myself about your feet in the water of the ford, so that you shall fall." Cuchulainn, ever defiant, hurls his own boast back at her. "I swear by the gods," he cries, "I will seize you in my hand and I will crush your ribs. You will carry the shame of that wound forever unless I myself grant you healing." The Morrigan is unmoved. "Then I shall come against you as a grey she-wolf," she continues, "and I will drive the cattle in a stampede against you in the ford. Then I shall cast a stone from my sling," Cuchulainn retorts, "and I will shatter your eye in your head. And you will carry that blemish forever, unless I myself grant you healing." Her final threat is issued. "Then I shall come against you as a red, hornless heifer, and I will lead the stampede, and you will be trampled into the waters and the stones of the ford. Then I shall cast another stone from my sling," he bellows, "and I will break your leg at the knee. And you will carry that wound forever unless I myself grant you healing." With that, the bond is forged. Not a bond of love or alliance, but a bond of adversarial fate. She vanishes, leaving Cuchulainn to face the consequences of his pride. And the Morrigan is always true to her word. During his climactic, grueling duel with the mighty hero Locke, she begins her assault. As Cuchulainn battles in the middle of the ford, a huge, black eel long and slippery as death surges through the water and wraps itself tightly around his legs, pulling him off balance. But Cuchulainn, remembering her threat, manages to get a foothold. He stomps down with all his might, and there is a sickening crunch as he breaks the eel's ribs. The creature writhes away, wounded. He has survived the first attack. But as the fight with Locke rages on, a great, gray she-wolf with ice like burning coals appears on the riverbank. It lunges at him, its fangs bared. Cuchulainn, with a single, swift motion, takes a stone from his sling and fires. The stone strikes the wolf directly in the eye, shattering it. The beast lets out a terrible howl and flees, blinded. He has survived the second attack. Finally, a herd of cattle, led by a distinctive red, hornless heifer, is driven into a panic and stampedes directly toward the ford, threatening to trample him underfoot. Amidst the chaos of churning water and hooves, Cuchulainn slings another stone. It flies true, striking the lead heifer and shattering its leg. The heifer collapses and the herd scatters. He has survived the third attack. Though hindered, wounded, and exhausted by this supernatural onslaught, he finally gathers his strength and slays his mortal opponent, Locke. He has wounded the goddess 3 times, just as he swore he would. But their encounter is not over. The goddess is cunning. Later, as Cuchulainn lies wounded and parched with thirst by the ford, he sees a figure. An ancient, bent old woman, hobbling on a bad leg, with the cloth over one eye, is milking a red cow, with a broken leg. She is the very image of the wounds he inflicted. He does not recognize her. He asks her for a drink of milk. The old crone the Morrigan in disguise obliges. She gives him a drink. Cuchulainn, as was custom, offers a blessing in return. A blessing on you for this, he says. At his words of power, the cow's broken leg is instantly mended. He asks for another drink and again he gives a blessing. At his words, the old woman's blind eye is healed. He asks for a third and final drink and gives a third blessing. At his words, her own hidden wound, the broken ribs of the eel, are made whole. He has been tricked. He has been manipulated by his own sense of honor into healing his divine nemesis. She reveals herself to him, her voice dripping with irony. You once said that I should never have healing from you. Cuchulainn, realizing his folly, can only grit his teeth and reply, had I known it was you, you would never have had it. This intricate dance of violence and healing reveals the depth of their connection. It is a relationship of adversarial respect. He is the only mortal capable of wounding her. She is the only being capable of so profoundly deceiving him. But the original sin, the spurning of her offer, still hangs between them, a prophecy of doom yet to be fulfilled. Years pass. Cuchulainn's life is a saga of glory. But his enemies gather, and by dark magic, they begin to unravel the Gisaid's sacred vows and taboos that protect him. His power wanes. His end is near. And the Morrigan appears one last time. Not as a seductress, not as a monster, but in her most solemn and final form. As Cuchulainn, knowing he rides to his death, makes his way to his final battle, he comes to a ford. And he sees her. The Phantom Queen. The washer at the ford. She is weeping silently as she washes a pile of blood-soaked armor and clothes. His armor. His clothes. He sees her and he knows. The goddess of sovereignty, once offered and rejected, now serves as the solemn herald of his fated end. Her presence is the final confirmation that his doom is sealed. In his last battle, Cuchulainn is mortally wounded. In a final, defiant act, he ties himself to a standing stone so that he may die on his feet, facing his enemies. The opposing army, so terrified of him even in death, does not dare approach his body. They wait for a sign that he is truly gone. And then it comes. A single, black crow flies down from the gray sky. It circles the stone once and then it lands, settling upon Cuchulainn's shoulder. It is Bab. It is the Morrigan. Her arrival is the signal. It is an act of claiming a final intimate communion between the goddess and the hero whose life she so profoundly shaped. It is not an act of malice or triumph, but one of grim finality, of cosmic closure. The goddess he rejected now presides over his death. Their tragic, terrible story is finally complete. The image of the crow on the dead hero's shoulder is the ultimate symbol of the Morrigan's power over war, over fate, and over the hero who dared to say no. Myths are not static relics, locked away in the sterile pages of dusty books. They are living things. They breathe, they adapt, they evolve. When the fires of their primary worship grow cold, their essence does not simply vanish. It seeps into the soil of the culture that bore them, re-emerging in new forms wearing new masks. And the echo of the Morrigan is one of the most powerful and persistent in all of Western folklore. Her reign as a goddess may have faded with the coming of a new faith, but her spirit, her shadow, never truly left the Irish landscape. Her most direct and famous descendant is a figure whose name is known across the world. A specter whose cry is synonymous with death and grief. Over the centuries, the Morrigan's aspects as the shrieking Nemain and the sorrowful washer at the ford coalesced and transformed, giving rise to the Banshee. The name itself tells the story of this evolution. Bean Sidhe, pronounced Banshee in Irish, means woman of the fairy mound. This immediately links her to the city, the Otherworld Mounds where the Tuatha De Dan were said to have retreated after their age of rule. The goddess of the battlefield became a spirit of the supernatural realm, but her function is a direct inheritance. The Banshee is a spirit who attaches herself to certain ancient Irish families, the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Connors, the Kavanaghs. Her mournful, terrifying cry, the Caoinet or keening, is not an attack. It is a prophecy. To hear the wail of the Banshee piercing the night air is to receive an omen that a member of your family, often far away, is about to die or has just died. She does not cause the death. She is its supernatural announcer, its official mourner from the otherworld. In the Banshee, we see the legacy of the Morgan perfectly preserved, yet softened. The furious shriek of Nemain, which drove armies to madness, has been transmuted into a cry of pure, soul-shattering grief. The grim, silent task of the Washer at the ford has been given a voice. The goddess of national conflict has become an intimate spirit of familial loss. The untamable fury of the Phantom Queen has mellowed into an eternal, sorrowful duty. Her influence also bled across the Irish Sea, her archetypal power so great that it likely helped shape one of the most complex and famous figures in all of Western literature, Morgan Le Fay of Arthurian legend. The similarities are too numerous and too profound to be mere coincidence. The very name Morgan is a probable cognate of Morgan, but the connections run far deeper than linguistics. Like the Morgan Le Fay is a powerful sorceress of immense and ambiguous power, a mistress of shape-shifting and potent magic. Her relationship with the central hero, King Arthur, mirrors the Morgan's relationship with Cuchulainn. She is at times a helper and a healer, but more famously she is his most cunning and implacable antagonist, a constant threat to his reign and his life. Like the Morgan is deeply connected to a liminal, otherworldly space, the mystical Isle of Avalon, a gateway between worlds. And in the final act of Arthur's tragedy after his fatal wound at the Battle of Camlan, it is Morgan who appears. She is one of the 3 queens on the black barge that comes to take the dying king away to Avalon to be healed or to die. This act of escorting the hero across the water to the otherworld is a classic psychopomp role, echoing the Morgan's presence at the fords that separate life from death. The Phantom Queen of the Celts, the tester of heroes and harbinger of their doom, may well be the divine godmother of the great and terrible enchantress of Camelot. And today, in our modern world, the Morgan is experiencing a powerful and profound resurgence. In an age where questions of personal power, of wildness versus civilization, and of facing uncomfortable truths are more pressing than ever, she has been reborn. She has become a potent and central figure in modern paganism, Celtic Reconstructionism, and various forms of feminist spirituality. In these new contexts, she is rarely seen as an evil goddess of death. Instead, she is revered as a source of strength for those who feel powerless. She is the embodiment of righteous anger against injustice. She is invoked as a fierce protector, the battle crow who encourages us to fight for our beliefs and to defend our boundaries. Her shapeshifting ability is interpreted as a lesson in our own power to transform, to adapt, and to redefine ourselves. She has become a symbol of personal sovereignty, the right to rule one's own life, to make one's own choices and to stand unbowed. She is the dark goddess who is not feared, but revered as a guide through the shadow work of the self, the process of confronting our own fears, our trauma, our rage. She teaches that there is immense wisdom and strength to be found in the parts of ourselves we have been taught to repress. She is not, and has never been, a comfortable goddess. She is not a gentle mother who soothes all ills. She is a goddess of reality in its most raw and untamed form. She embodies the difficult truths that conflict is a part of life, that death is inevitable, and that true power, true sovereignty is not given, but forged in the fires of trial and claimed with courage. Her echo is a cry, not of doom, but of awakening. So who is the Morgan? She is a trinity, a paradox, a force of nature given form. She is the shriek of the crow that chills the blood and the sovereign power that makes the land fertile. She is the frenzy of the battlefield and the quiet, weeping grief at the river's edge. She is the tester of heroes and the doom of the arrogant. She is not good. She is not evil. She is necessary. She represents the parts of life we often fear to look at directly: chaos, conflict, death, and the terrifying, beautiful wildness that exists both in the natural world and within our own souls. To understand her is to understand that true strength is not about avoiding the darkness, but about facing it, learning from it, and integrating its lessons. The next time you see a lone crow watching you from a branch, or feel a sudden, inexplicable shiver run down your spine, or hear the wind howl like a mournful cry, pause. Listen. You may just be in the presence of the Phantom Queen, the Great Queen, the eternal goddess who watches, weaves, and waits. For her story is not over. It is being written in every conflict, in every choice of destiny, in every struggle for sovereignty forever. Thank you for joining us in the halls of the Eldritch Codex. The story of the Morgan is a deep and complex one, and we have only scratched the surface of her lore. If you found value in this journey into the heart of Celtic myth, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell, so you won't miss our next exploration into the ancient and the arcane. What other gods, myths, or monstrous entities would you like to see us unearth from the Codex? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, walk with wisdom, and do not be afraid of the shadows. They have much to teach us.